The alien queen raised her hand. "Touch me again, human," she said. The starship hummed as it hovered above the surface of a distant planet, a cold, metallic giant lost in the vastness of space. Marcus had never seen a vessel like this before. Its sleek, dark exterior seemed to absorb the light, leaving only the faintest glimmer from the stars in its wake. He had been briefed on the mission, but the reality of stepping foot on the Voltari's flagship was nothing like he had imagined. He stood in the docking bay, his boots clicking against the polished floor as he looked around, eyes wide with curiosity. The Voltari were an ancient and powerful race, known for their unmatched beauty, intellect, and their fierce independence. They had rarely interacted with humanity in any meaningful way, and Marcus had been chosen for this delicate mission to help negotiate peace with them. The doors to the meeting chamber slid open, and Marcus stepped inside, his breath catching in his throat. There, seated on a throne of shimmering silver, was the Voltari Queen. Her presence was overwhelming, like the gravitational pull of a star, commanding attention with every movement. She was tall, her skin a soft, luminous shade of violet, her eyes a piercing shade of emerald green. Her long, dark hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of silk, contrasting sharply with the sleek silver armor she wore. The Queen's eyes met his, and for a moment the entire room seemed to still. Marcus felt the weight of her gaze like a physical presence, and he struggled to maintain his composure. He had been prepared for many things, but not for this. This feeling of awe, admiration, and something else, something deeper he couldn't quite place. "Welcome, human." The Queen's voice was soft yet commanding, a melodic tone that echoed in his mind. "I trust your journey was pleasant." Marcus swallowed hard, trying to regain his focus. "Yes, Your Majesty, the trip was smooth." "Good," she replied, her eyes never leaving his face. "Let us proceed then." She gestured for him to approach. As he stepped closer, he noticed the slight curve of her lips, a small but unmistakable smile that seemed to suggest she was amused by his discomfort. Despite her calm and graceful demeanor, there was an air of danger surrounding her, an intensity that reminded him she was not someone to be underestimated. The room was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the ship's engines as they floated in orbit. Marcus tried to steady his breathing, but the atmosphere was thick, oppressive. He had met powerful leaders before, but nothing had prepared him for the force that was the Voltari Queen. The tension in the room grew as she extended her hand toward him, her fingers delicate and long, with an elegance that belied her strength. Marcus hesitated for a split second, then took her hand, careful not to grip too tightly. As soon as their skin made contact, a strange sensation shot through his arm, a warmth, an electric charge that made his pulse quicken. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly, and her lips parted in a knowing smile. "You're not quite what I expected, human," she said softly, her voice now a little more teasing. "I assumed your kind would be more bold." Marcus wasn't sure how to respond. His heart pounded in his chest, and for a brief moment he felt exposed, as though she could see straight into him. It was unsettling, but also exhilarating. He had heard stories about the Voltari, how they were known for their beauty, their power, and their sharp minds. But there was something about the Queen herself that felt different. Her allure wasn't just physical, it was something deeper, something he couldn't quite understand. "Perhaps I'm more cautious than most," he replied, his voice steady despite the racing thoughts in his head. The Queen tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words. She was silent for a moment, studying him with an intensity that made him shift uncomfortably. Then, without warning, she raised her hand again, her fingers brushing lightly against his chest. Marcus froze, the touch soft, but the sensation it left behind was far from gentle. His breath caught in his throat as she spoke, her voice low and almost playful. "Touch me again, human," she said, her words hanging in the air like a challenge. "And you will understand more than you could ever imagine." The room felt colder now, the air thick with something unspoken. Marcus blinked, his mind racing to catch up with her words. What was she saying? What did she mean by that? He had been sent here to negotiate peace, not to become entangled in this. But as his gaze locked with hers, a small part of him, a part he had never expected to surface, wondered what it would be like to do exactly what she was asking. The Queen let out a soft laugh, a sound so unexpected that it startled him. It was a light, melodic sound that seemed to melt away the tension, if only for a moment. "You are not what I expected, human," she repeated, her eyes now reflecting something deeper, something hidden. I will enjoy seeing what you choose. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He had to focus. He had a job to do. His mission was important. Peace between their people depended on it. He couldn't afford to be distracted by whatever strange pull the Queen seemed to have on him. But even as he reminded himself of his duties, a part of him couldn't help but wonder what might happen if he did touch her again. What if the Queen's words weren't just a challenge, but an invitation to something far more complicated than a simple diplomatic meeting? As he stood there, caught between his duty and his growing curiosity, he realized that the next few moments could change everything. The soft hum of the ship continued to fill the silence between Marcus and the Queen, each breath they took seemingly heavier than the last. Marcus was still caught in the shock of her words. Touch me again, human. The challenge lingered in the air like an invisible thread between them, pulling him closer despite his best intentions. He had come here to do his job, to bring peace between the Federation and the Voltari, but now everything felt different. The Queen's presence was undeniable, her beauty overwhelming, and yet it was more than her appearance that unsettled him. It was the power she exuded, the way she held herself with an air of unspoken authority, as though she could see right through him. Marcus stepped back slightly, forcing his mind to refocus on the task at hand. He had to keep his composure. He had to be professional. His mission wasn't about personal feelings. It was about securing peace, about ensuring that humanity had a future among the stars. But the longer he stayed in the Queen's presence, the more he began to doubt his own clarity of purpose. The Queen tilted her head, studying him with an inscrutable expression. She wasn't pushing him, not yet. She was patient, watching as Marcus grappled with himself. It was almost as if she was enjoying this, enjoying the power she had over him. You're uncomfortable, she said softly, her voice like velvet. I can feel it. Marcus flinched, surprised by her insight. He hadn't said anything, hadn't given any indication of his inner turmoil, and yet the Queen seemed to know exactly what he was feeling. I'm not uncomfortable, he lied, trying to sound confident. But even as the words left his lips, he could feel the tension in his body. He wasn't fooling her. She saw right through him. The Queen's smile was almost imperceptible, but it was there, lurking at the edges of her mouth. She didn't respond to his denial, instead choosing to let the silence stretch on. The longer they stood there, the more it felt as though something unspoken was brewing between them. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He had to focus on the peace talks. The Queen was powerful, but he had a duty to his people, to his mission. His personal feelings didn't matter. But the longer he stood there, the more those feelings seemed to grow, wrapping themselves around his thoughts like vines. The Queen rose from her throne, her movements fluid and graceful, almost hypnotic. As she walked toward him, the air seemed to shift, becoming heavier, charged with something he couldn't name. You're far more than just a diplomat, aren't you, Marcus? Her voice was soft but penetrating, like a whisper in his ear. She was so close now that he could feel the warmth of her presence, the subtle scent of something exotic, something otherworldly. Marcus swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. I'm here to help establish peace between our people, he said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. The Queen's eyes softened, though the glint of amusement was still there. Yes, you are, she agreed, but I sense there's more to you than just a messenger. You've been hiding something, haven't you? The question was too much. It was as though she could see into his very soul, peeling back layers he hadn't even realized were there. He had come here to represent humanity, to be the face of diplomacy, but in that moment he felt like nothing more than a man, vulnerable and exposed. I'm here to negotiate, he replied, forcing the words out. That's all. The Queen didn't speak right away. Instead, she took a step closer, bringing them within inches of each other. The air seemed to hum with the unspoken tension between them, and Marcus could feel his pulse quicken as he struggled to maintain control. You're so certain of your duty, she said, her eyes locking onto his. But what if there's more to life than duty, Marcus? What if there's something else, something you've never allowed yourself to see? Her words were like a slow, deliberate poison seeping into his mind. She was tempting him, trying to pull him away from his path, to make him question everything he had believed in. The Queen was powerful, yes, but she wasn't just trying to negotiate peace. She was trying to make him see things from her perspective. But Marcus couldn't. He couldn't let go of his responsibility. He couldn't allow himself to be swayed by her presence, no matter how captivating it was. He was here to negotiate, to help secure peace for the Federation. That was his purpose, his duty. "I came here to do my job," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "I'm not here to feel things, I'm not here for anything personal." The Queen's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Of course, Marcus," she said softly, as though humoring a child. "You keep telling yourself that?" The room seemed to grow colder, despite the warmth radiating from the Queen's presence. Marcus could feel his chest tightening, a strange mix of frustration and desire building within him. He wanted to step away to keep his distance, but at the same time he couldn't bring himself to move. She was powerful, yes, beautiful, but there was something more, something dangerous in the way she could read him, in the way she made him question everything he thought he knew. "You may think you know what you want," she said, her voice barely a whisper now. "But when you touch me again, human, I will show you things you cannot even begin to comprehend. I will show you what it means to be truly free." Her words were like a challenge, a promise, but they left Marcus unsettled. What did she mean? Was this all just part of her games, or was there something deeper she was offering? He wanted to ask, to demand answers, but the words stuck in his throat. The Queen took another step closer, her face inches from his now. The space between them was electric, charged with an intensity neither could ignore. She reached up, her fingers brushing against his cheek. Marcus stood frozen, unable to move, to speak. He didn't know what she wanted from him or what she saw in him, but one thing was certain: he was in over his head. "Touch me again, human," she whispered, her breath warm against his skin, "and you will never be the same." Marcus closed his eyes, his heart pounding in his chest. The world around him seemed to blur, everything else fading away until only the Queen remained. He was losing himself, losing the ability to think clearly. Her words, her touch were all-consuming, and he knew that if he didn't leave now, he would never be able to walk away from her. But could he leave? Could he really walk away from her now? The answer wasn't clear. But one thing was, Marcus had crossed a line and there was no going back. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus stood still, feeling as though every nerve in his body was on fire. The Queen's words echoed in his mind, and every part of him screamed to step back, to leave this place, to go back to the safety of his mission. But he couldn't. There was something about her, something magnetic that held him in place, trapped in a moment where he couldn't think clearly. "Do you understand what I'm offering you, Marcus?" The Queen's voice broke the silence, soft and velvety, but it carried an undeniable power. Marcus swallowed hard. He had been trained to be steady in the face of almost anything, but this was different. This wasn't just diplomacy, this was something else entirely. I don't know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. His breath felt shallow, his chest tight. He wanted to pull away, to break the spell, but each word she spoke seemed to tie him further to her, binding him in a way that he couldn't explain. The Queen studied him, her eyes unreadable, but there was a flicker of something, amusement, curiosity behind them. She took a step closer, closing the space between them even further. "You're afraid," she said simply, her words hitting him with a truth that felt almost like a slap. "Afraid of what will happen if you give in, if you let go of your control." Marcus clenched his fists at his sides, trying to push back against the tidal wave of emotions threatening to overtake him. "I'm not afraid," he said, though he wasn't sure who he was trying to convince, her or himself. I can't." The Queen's smile deepened, though it wasn't cruel. It was knowing, understanding almost. "You can't what, Marcus? You're not afraid of me. You're afraid of what your desire for me will mean, of what it will cost you." Her words hit too close to home, too precisely. He had never been one to ignore his duty, to let personal feelings cloud his decisions. He had come here to do a job, to ensure peace, to make sure humanity was secure in the galaxy. But now, standing here, face to face with the most powerful woman he had ever met, all of that seemed so far away, like a dream he was no longer sure he could return to. "I came here for peace," he muttered, the words feeling empty even as they left his lips. Peace. Wasn't that what he was supposed to be working for? Wasn't that why he had traveled so far, to negotiate and build relationships? Why did he feel as though all of it was slipping away, slipping through his fingers like sand? "And that's exactly what you'll get," the Queen said, her voice almost tender now. "But peace isn't just about treaties or negotiations. It's about understanding, about forging connections between people, between species." She stepped even closer, so close now that Marcus could feel the heat of her body radiating against him, the intoxicating scent of her perfume filling the air. Her hand brushed against his arm, a fleeting touch, but it sent a shock of electricity through him, making his heart race even faster. "I understand what you're afraid of," she continued, her fingers gently tracing the outline of his jaw. "You fear that if you touch me, if you let yourself feel what's between us, you'll lose everything. Your mission, your future, your place in the Federation. But that's not true, Marcus." He felt his resolve begin to crack, to splinter, as her words sunk deeper into him. Everything she said made sense in a way that frightened him. "I don't want to lose myself," he whispered, though it felt like a lie even to his own ears. The Queen tilted her head, studying him with those penetrating, unblinking eyes. "You won't lose yourself. You'll find a part of you that you've buried deep, something you've been hiding for so long you didn't even realize it was there." She reached up, her fingers grazing his cheek, as though she were tracing the path of a deep, hidden truth. Her touch was electric. Marcus couldn't stop the shiver that ran through him, couldn't stop the pull that seemed to grow stronger with each passing second. He could feel the weight of the moment, the weight of her presence, pressing in on him from all sides. He had never been in a situation like this before, where his emotions seemed to take over, where his heart and mind collided in a way that left him helpless. He had been trained to resist, to maintain control, but in front of the Queen, all of that control was slipping away bit by bit. "You can resist," she said softly, her voice like a whisper against his ear. "But you'll only be lying to yourself. You'll only be denying what's already there." Marcus closed his eyes, trying to block out the voice of reason, trying to focus on the task at hand. He had come here for peace, for duty. He couldn't allow this strange pull, this connection, to distract him. But the truth was it already had, and now he wasn't sure he could walk away from it, no matter how hard he tried. "I'm not here for this," he said hoarsely, though the words felt like they were made of dust. "I came here to do a job." "And you will," she replied, her hand falling away from his face as she took a step back. "But you're more than just a diplomat, Marcus. You're more than just a representative of your people." She paused, her eyes locking onto his with a depth that felt like an invitation. "You are a man first and foremost, and it's time you started accepting that." Marcus wanted to argue, to push back, but something inside him had shifted. The walls he had built around his emotions were crumbling, and the more the Queen spoke, the more he realized just how fragile those walls had been. "You're right," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. "I am more than this. But I don't know if I can allow myself to be that." The Queen smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Then let me help you. Let me show you what it means to truly live, Marcus." Her words hung in the air, thick with meaning, and Marcus couldn't deny the pull any longer. The temptation to touch her again, to cross that line, was overwhelming. His heart raced, his thoughts scattered, and the only thing he could focus on was her. She was right. He was more than just a diplomat. He was a man who had lived his whole life hiding from his true desires, from what he truly wanted. And now, standing in front of this powerful, beautiful Queen, he realized that perhaps it was time to stop hiding. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and brushed it against hers. The moment their skin made contact, the world seemed to disappear. There was no mission, no federation, no peace talks. There was only the Queen and the heat that surged between them, igniting something deep inside Marcus. For the first time since he had arrived on this ship, he stopped thinking. He stopped questioning. And he let himself feel. The moment their hands touched, Marcus felt everything inside him shift. It was as if the ground beneath him had disappeared, and he was falling into a place where nothing made sense, where everything he had believed in, every part of his mission, was suddenly irrelevant. He had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The Queen didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers tightened around his, a silent invitation to come further into her world, into her presence. Her touch was electrifying, a warmth that seemed to burn its way into his skin, leaving a trail of heat in its wake. For a moment, Marcus forgot everything, his mission, his duty, his responsibility. All that mattered was the Queen, standing before him with a look of quiet triumph in her eyes. "You feel it now," she said, her voice low and smooth. "The pull between us, the connection. It's not something you can ignore." Marcus swallowed, his throat dry. He wanted to speak, to tell her that this was wrong, that he shouldn't be feeling this way, but the words wouldn't come. There was a part of him, deep down, that didn't want to resist. A part of him that wanted to give in to the feelings that had been building ever since he set foot on her ship. "I don't know what's happening," he admitted, his voice hoarse. "I came here to do a job, to negotiate peace, but this This is something else." The Queen smiled, a knowing smile that sent a shiver down his spine. "Peace is never just about treaties and agreements, Marcus. It's about understanding, about forging bonds that go beyond words, bonds that can change everything." Her words were both a warning and a promise. Marcus felt the weight of them settle on his chest, a pressure that was both suffocating and liberating. He had spent his life focused on his duty, on the future of humanity. He had never let himself feel anything that could distract him from that mission. But now, standing in front of the Queen, all of that seemed so far away. "You think this is about just us," she continued, stepping closer, her eyes never leaving his. "But it's more than that, Marcus. It's about two worlds coming together, about breaking down barriers that have stood for centuries. This moment, this connection, it's the beginning of something much bigger than either of us." Marcus felt her words wrapping around him like a chain, pulling him deeper into something he couldn't fully understand. He had always been taught to control his emotions, to keep a distance from the people he interacted with. But the Queen was different. She wasn't just another leader he had to negotiate with. She was someone who saw through him, who understood him in ways that no one else ever had. "I don't know if I can do this," he said quietly, his eyes searching hers. "I don't know if I can let go of everything I've worked for, everything I've believed in." The Queen's gaze softened, and she reached up to gently touch his face. Her fingers were cool against his skin, a contrast to the heat rising inside him. "You don't have to let go of everything, Marcus," she whispered. "You just have to let yourself feel, to understand that you're not just a diplomat, not just a soldier, you're a man, and it's time you stopped hiding from who you are." Her words hit him harder than anything else. She was right. He had spent his entire life hiding behind his duty, behind the mission. He had never allowed himself to truly feel anything, never let his heart lead him. But now, standing in front of the Queen, he realized that maybe he had been wrong. Maybe it wasn't about abandoning his mission, but about embracing all the parts of himself he had been running from. He closed his eyes, letting out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to just feel. The warmth of her touch, the intensity of her gaze, it all washed over him, breaking down the walls he had spent so many years building. When he opened his eyes again, the Queen was still there, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and understanding. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, with emotions neither of them had fully explored. "I don't know what this means for us," Marcus said, his voice trembling slightly. "For me, for you, for the peace talks." The Queen's smile widened, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "It means everything, Marcus, because we are the future. It's time for humanity and the Voltari to stop seeing each other as enemies, as strangers. We have the power to change the course of history, but first, you must understand what it means to truly connect with someone." She leaned in then, her lips just inches from his, and for a moment Marcus thought she might kiss him. But instead she whispered, "Touch me again, human, and you'll see just how deep this bond goes. It's not just about us. It's about everything we could create together." Marcus's heart raced, and for a moment he thought he might lose control completely. He could feel the weight of her words, the weight of what she was offering. The connection between them was undeniable, and every part of him ached to reach out and take it, to let the floodgates open and see where it would lead. But he hesitated, just for a moment. This wasn't just about them. This was about the future, about his people, about the peace he had promised to bring. He couldn't forget that. He couldn't let everything else slip away, not yet. "Are you ready, Marcus?" The Queen's voice was low, seductive, but there was something more in it now, something deeper. She wasn't just asking if he was ready for her. She was asking if he was ready to step into the unknown, to embrace something bigger than himself. Marcus looked into her eyes, seeing the challenge, the invitation, the promise. He could feel the pull between them, a force that was both irresistible and terrifying. He could walk away. He could tell her no, return to his mission, his duty. But deep down, he knew that walking away would be harder than anything he had ever done. "I don't know if I'm ready," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "But I think I have to be." The Queen's smile softened, and she took a step closer, her fingers gently brushing against his chest once more. "Then let's begin, Marcus. Let's see what happens when you truly let go." The air between them seemed to crackle with energy, with the weight of their unspoken words, and Marcus finally realized that the moment he had been dreading had arrived. He wasn't sure what it meant for the future, for the peace talks, for his people. But one thing was clear: nothing would ever be the same. And as the Queen's fingers slid down his chest, he knew that this was just the beginning of something much, much bigger than either of them could have imagined. The stars outside the ship's windows twinkled faintly, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Marcus stood by the Queen's side, looking out into the vast emptiness of space. His heart was still racing from the moments they had shared, from the deep connection that had shifted everything he thought he knew about himself, about duty, and about what peace truly meant. The Queen, her presence as commanding as ever, stood tall next to him. Her violet skin seemed to glow in the dim light of the room, and her dark eyes reflected the stars. She had shown him a part of himself he hadn't known existed, a part he had kept hidden for so long. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady his emotions. The peace talks had been a success, but it wasn't just the negotiations that had changed him. It was the connection between him and the Queen, something neither of them had expected, but something neither could deny. "This is the moment, isn't it?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The Queen turned her gaze to him, her expression softening, though still full of that quiet power that had captivated him since the first moment they met. "Yes, Marcus. This is the moment where everything changes." He looked at her, his mind still reeling from everything they had shared. He had come here with a clear purpose: to help negotiate peace. And now, standing beside the most powerful being he had ever encountered, he realized that peace wasn't just about treaties and agreements. It wasn't just about leaders shaking hands and signing documents. It was about understanding, about connecting on a deeper level, and about seeing beyond the surface. The Queen had shown him that. She had shown him that there was more to life than duty, than the cold rules of diplomacy. There was passion, there was connection, and there was the freedom to embrace who you truly were. "I never thought I'd be here," Marcus admitted, his voice quiet. "I never thought I'd be standing by your side like this, questioning everything I thought I knew." The Queen smiled, her lips curling gently. "It's natural to question what we think we understand, Marcus. Sometimes we have to lose ourselves to find the truth." Marcus let out a breath, letting her words sink in. He had lost himself. He had lost the rigid sense of control he had held onto for so long. He had let himself feel, and in doing so, he had found something more than he had ever expected. "What happens now?" he asked, turning his attention back to the Queen. She studied him for a moment, as if weighing his words before she answered. "Now, Marcus, we begin something new. We move forward not just as diplomats, not just as representatives of our people, but as something more, as equals. As individuals who understand each other, who have shared something that goes beyond words, beyond politics." Marcus's heart tightened at her words. He had come here expecting to negotiate peace, but what he had found was so much more. He had found a connection, a bond that transcended anything he had ever known. And now he was faced with the reality that it wasn't just the peace talks that had to move forward. It was his life. It was his future. "What about the Federation?" he asked, his brow furrowing slightly. "What about my mission? What about all the things I've worked for?" The Queen reached out and placed her hand on his, her touch as gentle as a whisper. "What about them, Marcus? You can't live for them alone. You can't live for a cause that doesn't allow you to truly live. What you've done here, what you found here, it's real. Don't turn away from it just because it doesn't fit into your old life." Her words struck a chord deep within him. She was right. He had spent so much of his life pushing down his own desires, his own emotions, in favor of his duty. But in this moment, with the Queen by his side, he realized that maybe he had been wrong all along. Maybe he hadn't truly been living. Maybe he had been surviving, waiting for a moment like this, when he could finally let go and embrace something more. "I don't know if I'm ready," he admitted, his voice quiet but filled with uncertainty. "You don't have to be," she replied softly. "But you have to be willing to take the first step, to open yourself to the possibility of something greater than what you've known. Only then can you truly find peace." Marcus thought about her words, about the journey they had been on together. It wasn't just about the peace talks, or the future of humanity, or even the Queen herself. It was about him, about the man he had been and the man he was becoming. He had come to this ship with a purpose, but now he realized that purpose had shifted. It wasn't just about diplomacy anymore. It was about finding balance between duty and desire, between the future and the present. The Queen stepped closer, her gaze never leaving his. You've already made your choice, Marcus. You're here. You've taken the first step. Now let's see where it takes us. His heart was still racing, still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt at peace. He wasn't sure what the future would hold, but he knew one thing: he didn't have to face it alone. The Queen had shown him that there was more to life than just surviving, than just fulfilling a mission. There was living, truly living, and for the first time he felt ready to do that. He reached out and took her hand, his grip firm but gentle, as if to seal the connection between them. "I don't know what's next," he said quietly, "but I'm ready to find out." The Queen smiled, a soft, knowing smile that spoke of everything they had shared, everything they had built. "Good," she said simply, "because the future is waiting, Marcus, and it's ours to create." As they stood together, looking out at the stars, Marcus realized that this moment, this choice, was just the beginning. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and unknowns, but he no longer felt afraid. He had found something worth fighting for, something that went beyond politics and duty. He had found a connection, a bond that would change everything. And as he held the Queen's hand, he knew that whatever came next, they would face it together.